Welcome to the Journey to Wellness podcast, sponsored by the Essential Wellness Society and Healing Wheel Holistic. I'm Melissa Stonehill-Kyam, and I will be your host. With over 40 years' experience in the health and fitness industry, I am ready to dive in to some of the most conflicting topics we have regards to health today. Let's go. Welcome back to another week of Journey to Wellness podcast. Today I have Kat with us, Star Code Coaching, and I couldn't be more intrigued. I have never spoken to anybody that works in the astrological realm, and this is something that has always been of interest to me. I grew up in Southern California, and in Southern California, everybody was like, what's your sign? Oh, my chart says this, my chart says that. I never had that done. And I love to study ancient civilizations. And I know that the stars have so much to do with our lives. And so having Kat today is really kind of checking one of my own personal boxes. And we had the pleasure of having a little offline chatter, which I hope that we can bring forth, because I think together we have some good messages to bring to a lot of women out there. But at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have Kat introduce herself and talk a little bit about what she's doing, what she's manifesting, and how she spends her days. So take it away, Kat.
Hi. I'm Kat. My full name is Catherine Bobo Chavez, or as my husband says, but I say Chavez because I'm fancier than he is.
That's nice.
And I have been really on a search for healing my entire life. And I've just now hung a shingle up in the last few years to be a spiritual practitioner, as I gathered all of the information from being kind of forced to do self-healing in my life. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I studied astrology. And through that study, I was able to kind of bring together all of the other aspects that I have been, I'm just one of those people who have to learn the hard way. And that's in my chart. I have to experience it and learn it. And another thing that's in my chart is that a lot of creative people are innovators, and a lot of innovators are supposed to be those that figure things out and kind of reject the set paradigms in life, the things that are already set up for us to walk through. Even as a child, I looked around at the world and said, this can't be right. This can't be right. I was an empath and didn't know it. Very sensitive empath, and nobody told me. I actually became labeled with a mental disorder or mental imbalance because I was an empath without any support. Trying to have this spiritual awakening to align with my soul self. I grew up in I love the South. I'm Southern, but I grew up in a very conventional or Southern traditional upbringing. Mm-hmm. And I never saw anything exemplified like what I needed. So my passion now is to do that for other people, is to be there with a different perspective on health challenges, mental health challenges. And again, I brought it all together through my study of astrology that began only 5 years ago. But it's a 13 sign astrology.
So I want to rewind just a little bit, because you made some very significant points right now. So a couple of them that I heard was that, one, you were forced into kind of taking the bull by the horns because you needed to have a healing, okay, for something, which is really important, because some of the best healers that I've spoken to and people that embrace alternative modalities have come to that because they had their own crisis and nothing worked.
Yes.
So can we touch upon that real quick?
Yeah.
Okay.
My whole life was different crises.
Okay. So it was like a cascade of not feeling right.
Step of the way, there was no help. Which made me, I went from an extremely shy child who couldn't look people in the eyes, that much of an empath, that sensitive to life, to having to just say, F it. I've got to, so I had to find my voice.
Mm-hmm.
I had to find my power, where I was literally stripped from, it was a stripping. I was completely stripped of that identity. And that's very good that it happened that way. I mean, I could tell, because I read charts, I know all this happened for a reason. And nobody has sufferings that are not intended to turn around and become your blessings. Mm-hmm. There's no meaningless suffering in life. And that's what I don't want to frame this as a terrible suffering, but the truth is it was a terrible suffering.
Well, I really like what you just said. And I think that statement right there can help a lot of people. Yes. There is no meaningless suffering in life. Now, think about people who suffer, and there's so much suffering going on in many different ways, because suffering is also an interpretation of a life event that happened to us. So one person's reaction to a situation is very different than someone else's. And it's that double arrow concept of, first we have the incident and it pierces us. And then the second arrow is our reaction to the incident. Mm-hmm. And by saying there's no meaningless suffering, why that's so significant is that we are living in a time where so much drug abuse is going on, there's so much suicide. There's this hopelessness because people feel doom and gloom and can't see, well, perhaps there's a silver lining. And yes. All of us who are in the alternative modalities, I believe that we are on a mission to help people heal, for one, because these manifest in physical ailments, they manifest in emotional ailments, psychological ailments, financial, everything. And we want to bring forth tools to help them on the way out. So that's why I didn't want to just gloss over that very powerful statement that you made. And then you also made two other statements. One was that you lost your power and lost your voice. And you were on a mission to reclaim that power and reclaim that voice. So many people that I speak to, it's men and women, feel that sense of loss of power and loss of voice. And this is so profound. So I love that you said those things. And I just wanted to point that out, because people are listening and, you're touching upon these points, and so many of them can touch people in a different way. Now, when you were on your journey, tell me about some of the different things that you dabbled with or explored or experienced to get you to where you are right now.
Well, since I was very young, I felt very comfortable that I kind of just knew things, but nobody else seemed to just know things. Mm-hmm. So I realized there was an inner compass that I had, but again, nobody validated so I started to learn how to find that compass and rely and trust it.
So we're talking
the compass.
Your intuition, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, exclamation point. But what I've realized is everyone, even those who don't feel like they're gifted intuitively, everyone has an inner compass.
Mm-hmm.
So part of really the root or the common thread through all of the things I've gone through and experienced is when I'm aligned with that compass, it just opens up. It's almost effortless. And what that is, what I'm learning through my new skills of astrology. So I went away to a health institute in San Diego called the Optimum Health Institute.
Mm-hmm.
I arrived there on about 6 prescription medications, painkillers, sleep aids. I had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder.
Mm-hmm.
But the autoimmune disorder wasn't, they couldn't specify which category. So I ran from specialists. It was almost lupus, but it wasn't lupus. It was almost MS. It wasn't MS. It was almost probably chronic fatigue syndrome, but also fibromyalgia. I had so I mean, I was chasing Western medicine and handing my entire, and I love Western medicine, and there's a need for it and a balance, but I was handing my entire self over to someone else to tell me what to do. When I went to the Optimum Health Institute in 2006 and stayed for their 3-week holistic healing program, which included detoxifying the body. I mean, big time. Like people show up there with very, very serious diagnoses. And with it, what it did was teach me how to get the body back to homeostasis.
Right.
And it was not outside of me. I didn't realize that the lean cuisine might be hurting me because it was lean.
Yeah, that process stuff. So were you juice fasting?
Yes, I was everything. Yeah. Juice fasting, raw food. So I did that for 3 weeks, and I arrived there. Also, I was in a relationship that was great on paper, but when I was leaving there, I realized I needed to leave that relationship because I found again while I was there, that inner compass, and it felt stronger and stronger and stronger. So I convinced my first husband to divorce me. It took him a minute. And now he landed with the woman he's still with today. And I did the same here. So, because it looked great on paper, but my soul. So what the common thread with this inner compass is what I'm realizing now is really your soul contract and aligning with your soul alignment. Maybe is a good word for it.
I really like this because I know like how many I've talked to people that have said, oh my gosh, I had the best day today. Everything just was aligning, all the things that I was trying to get done. It just was happening. I got the phone call that I needed. I got this. And what they don't realize is it's because they were in rhythm. They were in sync. And it's without going down a deep rabbit hole, it's quite mathematic. I'm studying the Hermetic principles, and one of them is the vibration and rhythm. And when we are rhythmically in sync, it's like an orchestra. And the things that we really need they're always there for us. They've always been there for us. It's just that we're operating on a different frequency, so we're not connecting. And then when we connect, it's fantastic. But with many, many people, that's a day here and a day there.
Right.
It's not a life. And so one of the things that I loved about what we chatted about is that you're designing your life. You're the director. This is your movie.
Yes.
You are creating the life that you want to live.
Yes.
And you want to help other people create that life.
Yes. And when I wasn't creating that life, that's when the sufferings showed up. Those were my signals that something was wrong. The autoimmune disease that suddenly was cured in 3 weeks when I aligned myself properly. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I definitely didn't have bipolar disorder because the psychiatric system doesn't know how to handle someone like me. So these labels that can be extremely devastating to people. Of course, the doctor said I was bipolar. So, okay. So then I bought into that, read into it. Then I read about it. And then I think I might have started manifesting what I read about, because then I became real bipolar.
Totally.
But now that I one of my passions is to look at a soul contract, which would be a 13-sign astrological chart. And I had a scientist to kind of teach me the ABCs about astrology. But then I started the reason my business is called Star Code Coaching is because I started putting the codes together and identifying what I saw to be karma from past life that mimics mental diagnosis. And in my own chart, I could see the origins of my behavior. And I know it's revolutionary. And I can find, I can see or decode on a chart. And this has just been coming to me really. Anxiety disorder, where the anxiety comes from, and the disorder is usually linked to a trauma from childhood, and that's usually linked to past life karma. Mm-hmm. So I am able to coach people who have extreme anxiety, mood disorders. Depression is one of my favorite subjects because you're out of alignment. It's a soul alignment thing, and it's one of the things that I'm most passionate about is suicide support, because I had suicidal ideation, and I was very mishandled. And I can see on a chart planet transits, and why you're having such an intense time at this moment, how many years you've been like this, because things are happening that are signaling you for an awakening or for seeing your life in a different way. So with the sufferings, let's say I was super creative and very moody, so they labeled me to be bipolar. So I have creation energy, which is innovation energy, but I also had spiritual energies coming at me, hitting me, blindsiding me, because I was a psychic. I was intuitive empath, and I didn't know what those were or how to handle them. So It's pretty layered when you're talking about labeling and diagnoses, especially mental diagnoses, because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So a lot of it is past life karma, default behaviors, the way we behave due to past life karma. And then when we correct those behaviors or balance them, they become our biggest gifts in life and what we have come to share with humanity. And I am extremely, if you can't tell, passionate about this. And I actually have, for suicidal support, I actually do complimentary readings for families who are dealing with it, to help them understand the soul contract of that person. And the reason why it was so intense. There's a reason why things are so intense. And if you can't get it.
Let me ask you this for people, your clients. So you come up with, it sounds like you come up with the kind of pinpointing or targeting, validating the issue.
Yes.
Then how do they move from knowing, okay, we have an issue.
Okay.
And now we have to transition into a curative mindset.
Yes.
And then also one of the things that you said was how we're thrown labels. You're
Yes.
bipolar, you're depressed, you're this,
Yes.
you're that.
Yes.
And then we become those labels,
Yes.
and then we Google search them and we become them more.
Yes.
And
You embody those.
yeah.
Yes.
And so then now we've created a new definition for our character, but we need to break that mold now. So what is that step that you take with people where they go from owning their diagnosis? You know, I've even consulted with people. I've been a nutritionist for decades. And a lot of people come in and they say the words, well, my fibromyalgia, my IBS, my this, my eating disorder. And by saying that, it's an ownership.
100%.
Right? And
yes.
Right away, I try to help them compartmentalize and move that out of the ownership of self-description. So what is in your practice something that helps people move from that position to redefining, letting go of that, and coming into wellness?
So I began the session by pointing out what their traumas are, and they're blown away that I can just see it. They don't have to tell me, I can see. Mm-hmm. And by identifying, bringing it to the light and having them understand it's part of your soul contract. Uh-huh. And I firmly believe that we are in agreement with our soul contracts before we come and forget about all that and have to play it out in life. So the ownership is understanding that there is the issue, which I identify. And then I can also identify, I can see the trauma, but I can also see life purposes. And they always are a flip side of the coin. It never isn't. So I'm telling you, this is the thing, and here's where we're going. So knowing where we're going is we're set. So now we have a path. We can pivot to that path. In the meantime, we work on identifying the default behaviors caused by that trauma. And when that specific behavior is also the flip side of it going, so it's from karma to dharma. Identifying the dharmic behaviors that kind of balance those karmic behaviors is important to identify what they are. But I also provide techniques like a lot of people can move very quickly when they understand what their purpose is. And a lot of people are kind of stuck. So we go through, I'm a forgiveness specialist. We can go through the 8 steps of forgiveness for that person who traumatized you. Right. Forgiveness is the gateway.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is the gateway. And I like for people to understand. So if it's sometimes they're couple charts or family readings. And so everybody can see the part they played in each other's dark karma and dharma, which also helps to make sense of it. Also, I go in and find where in the body that traumatic emotion has been lodged. Let's say sexual assault, 5 years old. A lot of times it's the heart. If it's anger, it'll be the liver, the gallbladder. And using a technique like emotion code, it's not emotion code, but it's like emotion code. We go in and release the trauma. And a lot of times where that trauma is stored is where the health issue is.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times.
I totally connect with that. And when I do intuitive nutrition readings and do body scans with my hands, I usually can pick up on heat centers. And I found that any kind of issue like gut issue, liver, thyroid is always connected to an emotion. Something that you said that really made me think about I read this book called Ikigai, which is the Japanese principle of waking up with purpose. It's a very small book, but it's something that's practiced in Japan. And what you said to resolve this issue was really in alignment with that is waking up with your purpose. If you have a purpose in life and you wake up and you are purposeful, it's a brand new playing field.
It is.
And that purpose can be very simple. It doesn't have to be deep. Maybe for you, maybe for one person, it's animal rescue and nurturing an animal. Maybe for another person, it's cooking. Food as love language. It doesn't have to be so deep of finding, why am I here in this world? It could be very simple as a stepping stone, because when you start to do these things, they're just small steps to the deeper meaning.
And thank you so much, because that's exactly what I mean by realizing the karmic behavior and then the balanced dharmic behavior. So if I'm afraid to speak up, if I'm afraid that my voice has no effect on the world, if I'm afraid to speak up because I was shot down when I spoke up as a child, simply your purpose could be to find your voice and understand that you are so important simply because you are here.
Right.
And yes, then that voice, you learn to find your voice. That could be your purpose next week. 5 years from now, that could turn into something else. But it all comes from that first step. And you're right, it can be so very simple.
And that's why I love the example of animal rescue, because
yes,
when you rescue a pet, you are now the voice for that suffering pet. So you are finding your voice through being the voice of something that has no voice.
Yes.
So
I love it.
Yeah, that's a really great example. Now, when it comes to the nuts and bolts of what you do, because it's very scientific what you do, tell me a little bit about what that looks like. Charting or connecting planetary alignments and people's birth dates, or is it based on birth date?
All I need is your birth date, time, and place, and we're off to the races.
I sent you mine just for fun.
I know, and you must have seen the message. I didn't see the place.
Oh,
guess what?
Brooklyn,
Yes,
New York.
Where?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, really?
Yeah.
I don't hear it.
Brooklyn, yo.
Oh, okay, there it is. You will be interested to know that your sun sign is Ophiuchus, the 13th zodiac. Ophiuchus. Okay. So, yes, there's a 13th zodiac on the chart, on charts. So what the nuts and bolts of what I do is I generate a chart, and on my chart generations, there's a 13th zodiac.
Okay.
Because I wasn't taught that, but that's one of those things, those informational things you get when, you're aligned and the path just opens up. And then I start, I don't know if it's channeling or where the information is coming from, but I have very specific understandings that come to me in dreams. So I wasn't taught that there's a 13th zodiac, but I woke up one day knowing there was ! So I started looking into it, and there is. I have a partner, and I have another business called Free Spirits Astrology, where we're developing this new type of astrology together with my partner, Brenda Martinez. And so we're doing a type of astrology that's just not out there. And so the morning I woke up and I messaged her, I said, there's a 13th zodiac. And she goes, I don't know what you're talking about, but I feel it. So then she started writing and channeling information. Then we started adding it to our repertoire along with the asteroid Chiron. And the 13th zodiac, so we started beta testing this. We said, what are we doing? So we started beta testing, and we got back like 100% accurate. We were going to beta test 50 before we started saying what we were doing and charging. After 15, it was just like people were telling other people it was a thing. It was very accurate.
To the asteroid.
So Chiron, the asteroid, points to a person's, Chiron is called the wounded healer. And the 13th zodiac, Ophiuchus, is called the serpent bearer. And on an astrological map, the Ophiuchus is in between Scorpio and Sagittarius, and he's stepping on the stinger of the scorpion. And so a lot of astrologers want to debate whether this is, a lot of Western astrologers, nothing against it, but this is like ancient stuff that kind of got lost in a Western astrology, the 13th zodiac. So on our ecliptic, on the line where our Milky Way, our galaxy is, and all the constellations on it, his knee is in there. So the Ophiuchus's knee is standing on the Scorpio's stinger, and he's stretching up to the center of the galaxy, holding a snake with a crown on his head. I mean, he's a thing. So he really literally is pointing to the Akashic records, and he's really pointing to a place of transcension on an astrology chart. So if you don't read Ophiuchus, you get to the place of transmutation, but there's no transcension.
Wow.
So how do you transcend? So the Chiron brings in, is called the wounded healer, and it points to everyone's specific issues as a child that they came in with. And that's that suffering. I mean, it's real, it's really real. So I don't mean air quote, your sufferings didn't hurt, but it points to the sufferings. But Chiron is the wounded healer. So when you find your way and start, for instance, if you didn't have a voice and now you're finding it, and once you do find it, now you're the wounded healer and you're transcending that issue. And now you have that to give back to the world. And it doesn't have to be your profession. It could be in the supermarket. It can be just showing up with your energy as you're owning who you are and that you do have a voice, and knowing those things, and just knowing where your light is inside is enough to give back sometimes to humanity, to be aligned with your authentic self, as I read from your soul contract. I just went off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it does make sense to me. And I think that I think birth is very significant in many ways. And when there's also, I'm very deeply involved with the lunar cycle as well, and have followed that for about 35 years of lunar cycles and looking at events like birth and death or transition, and based on where the moon is as well. And I would love to get my chart done by you. And I'm sure the people that are listening, if you're listening, how could you not want to get this done? Because you get this star map and this star coaching and this different modality of kind of like making a sense of it all is what I'm getting from this. And it's not like saying, it's not fortune telling of this is what's in your future.
No.
It's really, this was what was in alignment when you were born. This is your now. This is your framework. This is your blueprint. And how fun to know what that blueprint is. So, man, I wish this was like a 2-hour podcast because I could talk to you forever.
May I make one point that I forgot to make, which is pretty significant?
What I would love to do is we have to wrap it up, unfortunately, because of our time. But I would like you, we're going to have podcast notes and it'll tell people your links and this and that, but tell people how they can reach you. Do you practice online? Are you in person?
So I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And since the pandemic started lightening up, I do meet people in person. But I was developing my skill while the pandemic was in full-blown pandemic mode. And so I'm very comfortable doing it over Zoom. I have clients all over the United States, and Zoom is a very comfortable place for me to do it as well. And you can find me at starcodecoaching.com.
Okay.
And yeah, you can message me there. I've got my phone number sitting on the website. If you can text me if you'd like.
I'm so excited. And we've been talking, I have a retreat coming up. And I would love my retreat people to be able to be served by you as well, because this is such a unique modality. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate that you are here today. We're meeting via Zoom for reasons that you couldn't make it in today, but hey, no big deal, right?
We did it.
We did it. And today I am broadcasting from Center for Essential Wellness in Colorado Springs. This is a fabulous building. It's a home base for alternative practitioners. And today's episode is sponsored by the Essential Wellness Society and Healing Well Holistic. I couldn't be happier to have spent this hour with you. I am grateful for your time, and all of your contact info will be in the podcast, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.